Okay, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I am Jonathan April, General Manager of College Greenlight. Thank you for being here and being part of our community supporting first-gen students on their way to and through college. I am really excited about today's event. I need to disclose the fact that I am an alum of the University of Michigan and the Ross School. I am not wearing my maize and blue because I need to show some objectivity. I'm really proud of my alma mater, which has taken significant steps to reduce barriers, improve its affordability, and reach out to the college access community in really meaningful ways. We profiled Michigan's efforts in our recent research brief on CBO college collaboration, and I was most recently on campus when Michigan hosted the summer program for College Horizons, an incredible nationwide CBO. We have an hour block for today's event, including lots of time to answer your questions. Don't be shy. Ask the questions in the Ask a Question box. You can also ask questions in the chat. My colleague Val is in the chat, and she may move those over to the Ask a Question box to keep us organized. And now to today's presentation. I'm going to pass it over to my friend Blair to lead things off.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. So my name is Blair Moody Rideout. I'm Director of Admissions for the Michigan Ross School of Business. We're going to talk about the broad-based nature of a business degree, a look at undergraduate business programs. So I have been in this role, Director of Admissions at Ross, for about 8 years. I've been at the University of Michigan since 2006, first starting my career at Michigan in the Central Admissions Office. Before that, I've worked in academic advising, housing, student life, taught first-year seminars. So I have a very holistic approach to admissions because of my very holistic background working in higher education administration and student affairs. All right, so we'll get started here. So before we get started, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement from here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So the University of Michigan is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. In 1817, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations made the largest single land transfer to the University of Michigan, ceded through the Treaty of Fort Meigs, so that their children could be educated. We recognize the history of displacement of Native communities that facilitated the founding of the University of Michigan. We acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal lands, and we reaffirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabeg ties to this land, as well as the profound contributions of Native Americans to this institution. I'm getting some feedback. Not sure if others are. Okay, I'll keep going here. I would also like to acknowledge the racial injustices that are taking place across our nation. We have to say out loud, Black Lives Matter, and end that sentence. It doesn't need to be modified. Black Lives Matter. And that's from President Mark Schlissel, President of the University of Michigan. Okay. So this is a quote from our Chief Diversity Officer, Robert Sellers. As a nation, we must come together and be vigilant and decisive in combating xenophobic and racist behavior wherever we find it. We must do our part to support people in our professional and personal communities and speak up and speak out for all communities who are targeted. Collectively, we must rally around the belief that we, as a country and a university, must create a community that is welcoming to all. All right. So these are the topics we are going to cover today. So I'm going to talk about the popularity of a business degree, the landscape of undergraduate business programs, especially as it relates to unique identities and various program features. I'm going to talk about the undergraduate areas of study and career paths related to business, affordability in the door and parity out the door. I've already seen some questions on scholarships at Michigan, so I will talk about that and also focus on the Ross School of Business. And then we're going to talk about admission practices, especially that are unique to Ross. So our focus on outreach and summer programs, and also our portfolio approach to admissions. So thanks for joining me today. I am passionate about undergraduate business programs, and I'm sure that will shine through. I also want to note that I'm going to talk about business schools in general, but we are the University of Michigan, so I have the hell yeah, go blue there, and I will focus on some of our programs. So popularity of a business degree. So we've really seen a paradigm shift in the last 10 to 15 years on how we approach undergraduate education, and especially at large publics like the University of Michigan. When I talk about how there's an increasing professionalism of the undergraduate degree, what I'm meaning is that professional degree, that Master of Business Administration, that Master of Public Health, or a Master's in Data Science. We're starting to see those programs at the undergraduate level. So we'll talk through that approach to a business degree and how that is the current approach for most undergraduate business programs. Now, I do have a poll here, and let me pull it up if you can see the poll there as well. I have 3 polls throughout, and the first one I want us to answer now if we can. So, what college majors are most in demand? So if you want to go ahead and vote, and then we'll show you in the next slide what are most in demand right now. Okay, I see some votes coming in. All right, so it looks like most think computer and information sciences. Getting some more votes. Then business, engineering, health professions, and liberal arts. So you guys, for the most part, are correct, except that business is the college major that is most in demand. Of course, then computer and information sciences, engineering, health professions. But again, we're starting to see that professionalism of the undergraduate degree, the shift away from the liberal arts as core, but there's certainly still a strong integration of the liberal arts. So where is this demand coming from? So demand is coming from market forces that are external to student choice, but student choice is really starting to catch up as well. So the data here that's quoted up top is from AACSB, which is our Association to Advance Collegiate Schools of Business. And they've noted we've seen a gradual rise in entrance and enrollment over the past 7 years for students that are studying business. In 2017-18, we actually had almost 2 million undergraduate students enrolled in a business program, and that was a 9% increase from the year before. So we are continuing to see this increase in students that want to pursue undergraduate business education. We also find that the National Center on Education in the Workforce found that business was the most common field of study for every racial and ethnic group, but that men earn the majority of business bachelor's degrees. So we know there's still some work to do there in parity in terms of gender for our women that also went to study business. I encourage you, if you are working with a female student that is really good at math, or is interested in communications, which is very similar to marketing, to really talk with them about a professional undergraduate business degree. And we have a lot of programs that support women that want to go into business, and we can talk more about those too. So the landscape of undergraduate business programs. So now we're going to look at different types of undergraduate business programs. So another question there, a poll. What is the typical program format? And by that, I mean years of college coursework for undergraduate business programs within the US. So if you want to vote there, I think most of you might have. All right, so most folks are saying 4 years. And you are correct. This wasn't always the case. Jonathan was actually sharing a story when he did the business program. It was just a 2-year program. And in 2006, we moved from a 3-year to a 2-year, or from a 2-year to a 3-year program. And then in 2017, we moved from a 3-year to a 4-year program. So 4-year program is the most popular. This grid here, and we'll talk through it now, it lists the top 15 undergraduate business schools. If you look in that first column, also in parentheses, it talks about the donor name. You know, it's typically how we're named, a prestigious alum, and we have an identity affinity for that. You often hear students that will talk about Michigan Ross or Stern when they refer to NYU, or Wharton when they refer to University of Pennsylvania. It's really an MBA identity approach that is now starting to be the identity approach for undergraduate students as well. The second column is going to list the group by U.S. News and World Report ranking. Disclaimer, there are limitations to rankings. It does not imply fit by any way at all, but it is something the easiest way to categorize groups of schools, and often what we see in undergraduate business programs in terms of how we're categorized by the field of business education. Tuition is listed there too. If it is a state institution, it's going to show the state. And then if it's the private school, it'll obviously look significantly higher. I think the best indication of fit, though, would actually be column 4 and column 7. So column 4, where it shows approximate enrollment by entering class, that's a really good indication for your student to understand maybe how big their class size would be. Any given accounting class, marketing class, management class. It's also a really good indication of how many majors or areas of specialization that the business program might offer. I would guess that a smaller academic program by class size might not have as many academic offerings as a school that has a larger incoming class. And so the number is incoming class by year. You also look at the demographics there, female and underrepresented minority enrollment. We talked before about how females still, it's not a popular choice for our young women, and so that shows here. Again, there are lots of different programs at a lot of these business schools that offer scholarships for young women going into business. I know at the Ross School of Business, we have our ACK initiative for women in finance, where we actually do treks and trips to New York City to help the students learn about finance and investment banking. We also have treks to places like Seattle, where we visit corporations like Microsoft, where we learn about corporate finance. And these are just for our female students because the companies really want to hire more women that are going into business. Similarly, with our underrepresented enrollment, we have a number of programs for students' affinity programs based on identity. We do similar career tracks to make sure that there's parity within the workforce and a lot of support as well. Then we get to the different years of programs, the 4-year, the 3-year, the 2-year. The 2-year programs, typically students come into the liberal arts program that first year, and then they apply typically their sophomore year to gain enrollment junior year, and it's a 2-year program. Some of these schools do have admission processes out of high school, often known as assured admission or preferred admission, where they're guaranteed a spot, provided they meet a certain GPA those 2 years on campus. We're seeing less and less 2-year programs over the last 10 to 15 years. I think most schools eventually will be that 4 or 3-year route, but it is something to note because often students will maybe apply to a business school, but not realize the curriculum starts until that 2nd or 3rd year on campus. And that means it's a different type of community at that university in terms of the business program. And then the last 2 columns are outreach programs that I think are really important. I think it also is an indicator of what the community like is at the school, if they are supportive of students that are limited income, first generation or with minoritized identities. And for us, we have a fly-in program called All Access Weekend that is just for the business school. I have a slide, a couple slides later, we'll talk about it. And then a couple other schools there have university-wide fly-in programs to make sure that students get a good feel of campus and just a way, for students to understand what campus life is about and to have that visit experience. And then also summer programs. All of these schools listed here do have summer programs, but when my team did this benchmarking research, we wanted to see who actually had a summer business program. And so the ones that have yes there in that column show the summer business programs. We have a 2-week residential program where we bring students to campus. It is virtual this summer, but when we're not in a pandemic, it's a great experience for students to stay in their residence halls and to also get instruction from our faculty members at Ross. All right, so let's talk about the undergraduate areas of study and career paths. So that broad-based nature of a BBA. So I love this image here. It says, find what you love, do that. That is in our view book, and it's truly how we want students to approach their academic life. So at the Ross School of Business, there are no declared majors or concentrations. It is truly broad-based. Students can have 2 to 3 areas of specialization. It's pretty unique to Ross in this approach. I think most other business schools are going to have that lockstep where you declare a major, you take 30 credits in that major. It's very difficult to transfer a major. But at Ross, we've never had a major, which is very, it's similar to our MBA program. We were modeled after our MBA program. MBA programs typically don't have majors. And so again, that professionalization of the undergraduate degree. It's also very industry focused. You'll see consulting on there, finance, banking. And then we also have areas that are not industry focused, such as strategy, which really complements consulting. And it's more how we approach organizational thought and is really aligned with organizational behavior, theories of organizational behavior. So when you're talking with your students, they often know the different liberal arts majors, psychology, communications, mathematics, but they don't always understand maybe the functionalities of a business program or the academic majors that we have. So I often tell students, and this is a presentation we do on our own. We could do it for your CBO where we talk about how liberal arts ties to different majors within a business school. But I often talk to students about psychology, for example, students that want to go into psychology. Well, psychology is the backbone of marketing. So if you think about consumer behavior, we have a sensory marketing course. It's all about psychological theories, but the practical application of those theories. So for us, when we're talking with first generation students that might not understand the concept of majors or how they align to industries, we have a presentation that will go through that focus. I also like to talk about sales and how sales relates a lot to liberal arts majors that are communications. So if you have students that are interested in communications, working with others, sales is often a really good path for them to be in. Sales is essentially a variety of marketing courses. And then students often ask me, well, what kind of job do I get from a sales degree? Google. So students often think of Google as a technology company, but they're actually more of an advertising and ad sales company. And so many of our students that have a specialization of sales and probably a bit of strategy consulting as well will often work for big tech companies like Google. So we do really good practical presentations for students to help them understand, like, what is a major, a specialization, how does it tie to a career? And so this is just a quick overview of the broad-based nature of an undergraduate degree. And many of the business schools I listed before are going to have similar majors or specializations for students to study. All right, so let's talk now about affordability, something I am very passionate about. I've seen some questions about affordability, which is great. You can throw me those hardball questions. I'm used to answering those. But we are committed to affordability. So we have, I think, the last poll here. You can go and fill it out. So the Princeton Review lists the University of Michigan as one of the top 5 public colleges with the most generous financial aid packages. What is Michigan's average need-based scholarship award amount? All right, so it looks like 24,000 was the winner, and 21, 18, 13, 8. So trick question. You would probably think that I would put Michigan as, first, but this is the Princeton Review, not Blair Moody Rideout. And the University of Virginia is actually first there. So kudos to the University of Virginia. The University of Michigan is next at 21,000. And then we have UNC Chapel Hill after that at C, or 18,000 there. Florida State at 13,000. And then 8,000, City University of New York, Hunter College. So kudos to all of those schools that are up there. University of Virginia and Chapel Hill were sandwiched between those two. Those two are 2-year business programs, but they still have business programs. So I want to talk now about affordability. All right. And I want to also say I have parity there because I think parity is really important as well and almost just as important. So affordability. So this is a huge amount. And I'm so very fortunate and proud to work at a university that takes affordability very seriously. So in a single year, we award this amount in scholarships and grants for our students. 2 out of 3 first-year students do receive some type of financial aid. We are committed to making a Michigan degree affordable. I'm going to focus on 3 big scholarship programs at the University of Michigan. There are many others, and I'm going to focus on the Ross School of Business next in terms of our affordability efforts. But these 3 are open to all students at the University of Michigan. The first, I should say, that was open just to in-state students. So our Go Blue guarantee covers, through scholarships and grants, the cover of tuition and fees. So the full cost of tuition and fees for our in-state students. There is a family income cap of $65,000 or less in assets below $50,000. So students that might be above that cap or meet that asset threshold, they still do get some portion of their tuition and fees covered. It might not be full, but the Go Blue guarantee is something we are very proud of. Not many public institutions of higher education can meet that full need for their in-state students, so it's something we are certainly very proud of. The next 2 I'm going to talk about are for both in-state and out-of-state students. Our Blaven Scholars Program. It's for students that have found themselves at times to be in foster care, might be an independent minor, or have a unique family guardianship situation. We provide comprehensive support in terms of financing their education and navigating the college experience. So full tuition support, full room and board. In addition to that, we pay for flights to and from campus if they are an out-of-state student. We help them with summer housing. We also help with things like study abroad. So often students have to pay for that plane ticket to go abroad or a program fee. And through what we call Blaven dollars, we make sure everything is paid for those students. So this is a wonderful program that I have not seen at many other universities, and something we're really, really proud of. The Lead Scholars Program. So I think someone mentioned that in a question too about our the ban on affirmative action in the state of Michigan. And so the Lead Scholars Program is in response to that. So in 2006, Michigan voters passed Proposal 2, which banned affirmative action within the state. So our Alumni Association responded, and they privatized, and they created a scholarship where they could still take race and gender into account, but of course, holistically looking at diversity, excellence, achievement, and leadership. And so very proud that we have this program to support diverse students on campus, and it is also a very sizable scholarship for our students. So I'm going to talk now about Ross scholarships. I'm going to focus on just one in particular, but I want you to know that we have many different scholarships at the Ross School of Business. We give scholarships for students that come to our fly-in program that are admitted. We have outreach and pipeline scholarships that we work with certain CBOs. And then we also have scholarships that are related to different areas of study. It could be marketing, consulting. This next one I'm going to talk about is real estate and finance related, but it's just one of the many scholarships that we offer. The big piece to know about scholarships, since the University of Michigan covers full need for in-state students, most of the scholarships we have, we're looking for out-of-state students to tack on to other institutional aid that students receive. Okay, so our commitment to parity. So scholarships affordability is huge, and Michigan has always been committed to affordability. We're also really starting to look at parity to make sure that our students are going to the workforce at an equal rate that their peers are. So this is our BLAU initiative for diversity in real estate and infrastructure. It has a focus from high school pipeline to get students involved, interested in our programs, a scholarship. Once they are identified as a related scholar, we have a career development series to introduce them to investing in real estate, and then also an internship program with the related companies. So let's talk about that Investing Academy. So this is a program for our CBO partners in which we bring 20 students to Related. So Stephen Ross is our namesake. He owns Related. It's the company he started. And so this is his initiative. And we bring high school students to New York for a 3-day investing academy. I will say it hasn't happened yet because of the pandemic. We just got this inked and ready to go, and then the pandemic hit, so we've changed everything to virtual. We were not able to change this program to virtual, but this is a program I encourage you to reach out to us about if you have students that are interested in real estate and finance that are high school students, because this is an opportunity, a phenomenal opportunity for them. We would then like to identify students from that Investing Academy to be admitted to the University of Michigan, to be selected to be a related scholar. 10 students per year that get 50,000 scholarships, so we're committed to covering that full cost of tuition. There was a question about our sticker price is 70,000. Do you cover for cost of tuition? We do in a variety of ways. This covers full cost of tuition. Once students are on campus, though, I've never liked the fact that we give a scholarship, we admit a student, and then we're kind of done. Like I said before, my background is in academic advising and student life. And so I want to create a cohort of students so that they feel very much supported. So we teach them early on typically about investing first, because that then leads to an interest in real estate. If they continue to go down this path, then they go forward with an internship at Related. And often that can lead to full-time employment. One of the pieces I want to talk about here that I'm also very proud of, that internship program, it's not just getting the internship, but they also get a $10,000 stipend in addition to that summer salary at Related, because they are living in New York City for the summer. So they need $10,000 to live in New York City for the summer. So often, again, going back to affordability all the way to parity, we get students to campus, but then sometimes they can't engage in internships because they don't have the funding to go to an internship to pay for housing or other opportunities. So this is a program that I am extremely excited for. We do workshops on all of our programs. If you want to talk more about this program, myself or someone on my team would very much be willing to talk with you and your students about the BLAU Initiative for Diversity in Real Estate and the Related Scholars Program. All right. So admission practices. So how do we identify, recruit, and ultimately match our scholarship dollars? It really starts with our pipeline programs. So both our outreach and our summer programs. So the first one listed there is All Access Weekend. The application is actually live today. There's the website there. So it is an all expense paid fly-in weekend that we typically do in fall. This year it is virtual. It was virtual last year. The nice thing about being virtual is we actually have a program that expands beyond the weekend, and we put students in mini groups where they get to have a current student who serves as a mentor for them even after All Access Weekend. All Access Weekend for us is really about building community, not just showing them campus. When we're not in a pandemic, we also fly in parents or guardians because we know with outreach work, it's about recruiting the entire family. And it's not just a weekend where you sit in a financial aid presentation or an admissions information session. We actually do real world action-based simulations. They have a marketing simulation they've done in the past, an entrepreneurship simulation. We have a fabulous stock trading floor. They actually get to work with the technology to go through a stock trading simulation. So it's a fabulous program. The second group there, Go Business, Go Blue, that is the overarching header for our admit programs. So we have something called Ross Preview Weekend, which is a fly-in weekend for admitted students. We do award scholarships to students that attend this program. It's very similar in terms of content to All Access Weekend. Excuse me, but the difference is that students are admitted to our program. We have then the Diversity Spotlight Series, which is essentially where we introduce students to different affinity groups on campus, our Michigan Business Women Association, our Black Business Undergraduate Society, so different identity-based groups where we actually introduce them to current students that are leaders of those groups. And then our Campus Day program is for all admitted students. Summer Business Academy, this is a 2-week residential pre-college program. It is virtual in this summer, 2021. Application typically opens in November. It's due end of January, but this is typically a 2-week residential experience where students are taught by Ross faculty members and industry professionals. So they come to campus, they live in residence halls, they come to Ross. And I'd like to say this is a Ross program. There are some summer programs out there that are run by third-party companies that just lease space on colleges and universities. This is not that. This is run by our team. Our faculty members teach the courses, and we actually do different site visits. You know, Detroit, if you think about the big three, the Motor City, the auto industry, we go to General Motors. We also go to the Google office here in Ann Arbor. And so we're showing students about business. It's not just learning from faculty, but it's also going into different industries during that 2-week experience. It's a phenomenal program. All right, admissions. So we have a portfolio approach to our admissions process. So the Ross Admissions Portfolio is a personal, open-ended way to share more about who students are and why they are interested in business. So essentially, we're trying to meet students where they are at. We want them to submit what they want to submit. So we give them control of this process. And the biggest piece where they have control is the artifact submission. So they upload what the faculty call an artifact, and then they write about what they learned through this process. So essentially what that is, we tell students, you know, think of your 4 years of high school. What are you most proud of? And that's what you submit as your artifact. So high achieving students, students within your organization, they're involved in a lot of different things. They're good at a lot of different things that we don't capture in a traditional admissions process. So they submit, upload whatever they would like. One of my favorite submissions would be a student that actually submitted the speech notes of the speech she gave instead of the copy of the certificate of the award. The speech notes told us a lot more about what she did, the time she put into this, how she valued this, than just seeing the certificate of the award. So we're trying to look at more non-traditional ways of valuing the work students do. I also think the portfolio is great because students have ownership. And I don't know if some of you read that article earlier this week, the opinion article, I think it was the New York Times, about I don't want to sell my pain. And I think the artifact allows students to tell us what they want to tell us. We do application workshops all over Michigan, all over the nation when we're asked to. We fly out to give workshops. And we were doing a workshop in the city of Detroit at our admissions center. We have an admissions office in the city of Detroit. And there was a student there, and he talked about everyone in his high school was telling me, you know, you're from Detroit, you want to go to Ann Arbor, you got to have a sob story about being from Detroit. And the student said to us, he goes, "That's not me." And we said, "No, that's not you." And so through that workshop that night in reflection, he actually decided that he was going to submit a picture of his bike. So his bike, he had biked to our admissions office in Detroit, I think about 3 miles that night to get there. And with his bike, he had a backpack that had an extra tube for his bicycle tire and all these other tools in case, you know, something were to happen. Through his story, you know, we learned that his parents didn't have transportation, that he had to rely on himself for what he needed. And this is exactly what we wanted to see, but we wanted to see it in his context, in what he was comfortable sharing. And so he was very comfortable sharing about his bike, mechanics of his bike, what it meant to him. And that for us was, you know, in our minds, all of those words we talk about in admissions, grit, perseverance, follow through, was everything we wanted to see. But he was able to write it to us on his own terms. And so that's why I really like the Ross Admissions portfolio. We've gotten a lot of feedback from our students, from parents, from guidance counselors that they really enjoy this because their student has this one thing they want to talk about, but there's never space because the college application is such a controlled process. On the reader side of things, it was very hard for our readers to adjust to getting all different types of information coming in. But now they actually find it's their favorite part because we truly get to understand who the student is. It's not always about achievement, it's about understanding who the applicant is. So I do have a blog post about the Ross Admissions portfolio if you'd like to go check that out. There's a student there, Priyanka. There's actually a video on what she submitted. She was a student from a more rural part of our state of Michigan. We likely might not have considered her in the past because of some academic indicators, but her artifact was phenomenal. And so this has really allowed us to admit a different type of student than we might have in the past. The Ross Admissions portfolio, it's also featured as a best practice by the Learning Policy Institute. So there's that brief there if you ever wanted to look for that. Both the Ross Admissions portfolio and the Maker portfolio, that MIT, it's optional for their admissions process, are two areas that the Learning Policy Institute will feature as a best practice. So when you think about admissions, you want to know the deadlines, right? So November 1st is our early action deadline. It is also the priority deadline for the Ross School of Business. If you have a student that wants to study at the Ross School of Business, if they want to be considered for our scholarship programs, they must apply by November 1st. That includes submitting their Ross Admissions portfolio. It is through SlideRoom, which has an integration with a common application or coalition application. It is separate, though. It's a link that takes them to the SlideRoom portal. They have to create an account. It's not many questions. And then they submit their portfolio through that process. So I want to end with our commitment to CBOs before we open up for questions. Recruitment travel, we do include CBOs in our recruitment travel. If you would like us to come to your CBO to provide an interactive workshop, whether it's application specific or more business specific, we're willing to do that. We have portfolio application workshops. Those are typically the most popular. It's similar to that workshop I just mentioned before at our Detroit Center. It's a really reflective workshop that we do with students. We have admitted student dinners and receptions to celebrate our admitted students from CBOs. We think it's really important to celebrate our students because it eases the transition to college, and we're really focused on our outreach population and our CBOs when we're looking to celebrate students. And then our fly-in programs are both for prospective and admitted students. So we have a variety of different ways where we're committed to a relationship with our community-based organizations. Here's my information. So if you'd like to learn more, that is our main website where you can learn about the BBA. And then also my email is there if you would like to connect with me. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to connect with some folks. We're always looking to recruit more and more folks, especially to share in these wonderful scholarship programs that we have. All right, should we do Q&A, Jonathan?
Let's do it. Blair, excellent presentation. Yeah,
Thank you.
I learned a lot. Not only about Michigan Ross, but about the whole business landscape. And I think our counselors work with lots of students that might be interested in business. So I think that was great to cover the whole landscape. We did get a bunch of questions and some newer ones that are coming in. We'll take the next 10 minutes or so to get through these. A bunch are related, as you might expect, to affordability. So I know you talked about it, but let's go back to some of these questions. The first question actually came in through chat early on before we began the webinar, which is around, it says, with out-of-state tuition roughly $70K, and New Michigan is a public school and unable to provide diversity scholarships, how will the college provide, I guess, outside of the specific scholarship programs that you offered, how will the college provide sufficient aid to out-of-state students with zero EFCs? So
zero EFC we do meet. So there might be some grants. There's minimal loans within the package. I've done presentations before where I've shown different screenshots of actual aid packages, obviously taking out the student identifying information. But the University of Michigan, for your students with zero EFC, we're going to meet close to full need as possible. Then typically the academic units like Ross will come in, and sometimes, because there's another question there where we can add on, sometimes it might replace some institutional aid. It's why we have a financial aid office at Ross in addition to our central financial aid office. It's a pretty complicated process that we want to handle. We don't want the student to handle it. And so the sticker price is typically not anywhere near what students will pay when they have an EFC of zero. And most of the time, we're going to cover full tuition.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sandy from OLA in LA asked a question around health insurance for out-of-state students. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so typically students will pay for health insurance on campus. So we do have, the University of Michigan has a medical system. It's very reasonable for students because we have the University of Health system. So there is an option if they are not on a parent's health plan or a prior health plan, they can have a student health plan at the University of Michigan that is very reasonable.
You talked about the Summer Institute, the summer program. Is there financial aid when that returns to campus?
Yeah, there is financial aid. We actually cover full program costs for almost half of the students. Yeah.
I put a link in the chat with the link to the fly-in program, the All Access Weekend. How many students are typically part of that program, and any tips for helping students to stand out in the application process?
Yeah. So we typically fly in about 35 students and their parents. Tips for the application process. We are looking for students that are interested in an undergraduate business education. So there are a couple essays that will touch on that. And so we want students to focus more on business than maybe the overall university and wanting to see Ann Arbor or the football stadium. We're looking for students that want to study business. Now, the fly-in program, we're actually looking for juniors and seniors. So it's minimum having met completing sophomore year within your high school when you apply right now. So we know that students, especially that just completed sophomore year, don't understand maybe what business is or business terminology. But if they talk about areas that interest them and why business, working with groups, solving complex problems, wanting to work for large corporations, that's what we're looking for.
I believe this was the first year of the test flexible policy. Mm-hmm. What was the impact of that on the diversity of the incoming class?
Yeah, so anecdotally, what I'm seeing so far, we won't publish data until September. We saw an increase of diversity of applicants related to racial identity. We are seeing an increase first-gen low-income students. We're seeing a lot more valedictorians that maybe we wouldn't have considered before because they were worried about their test score, especially from rural areas in the state of Michigan. So what I'm seeing and what my readers are seeing is that it is starting to diversify the class. We've also seen so far with deposits, we are seeing a couple higher percentage points for our underrepresented minority enrollment, URM enrollment. So I do think it is looking positive for us. I'm hearing from peers at other schools, they're seeing something similar, but we typically wait and we'll share that data come this fall.
Okay. There was a question about the November 1st deadline. And is that the last deadline for Michigan Ross, one and only?
It's February 1st is the last deadline. November 1st is early action. February 1st is regular decision. We do encourage students to apply by November 1st. And when do they hear? Is that I'm looking at that now too. Yeah. So we release decisions after the University of Michigan. So it's a two-tier review process. Students first need to be admitted to the University of Michigan. If they apply early action, they typically hear end of December. This year it was January because of the pandemic. Those applications are then forwarded to my team. So because of that, we release decisions February through April.
Okay. In terms of, obviously Michigan Ross is a 4-year program. What percent of their classes are going to be in the business school versus outside of the business school?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first 2 years, it's about half and half. And I would assume that's how it is for most universities because there's a liberal arts base. We call it our College of Liberal Arts, their distribution. Sophomore year is when major coursework really starts, the core curriculum. That's about 7.5 credits. And then you'd add on another 7.5 credits to get to 15 credits of your liberal arts. Junior and senior year, majority of classes will be within Ross, but students that are pursuing a minor or a dual degree across campus will certainly have coursework across campus too. I like Michigan has a strong focus with the liberal arts. And so our students are business students, but they're very engaged across campus. And, in the last 10 years, I think 50% of the time, the president of the student government for the overall university was a Ross student. They're very much involved across the university.
I love my architecture class. I love my art history class in Michigan. Those are fun to take.
Yeah, our students love computer science courses within engineering. We have now a School of Information with an undergraduate course on social computing. So students are so interested in the dynamics behind social media. You can take courses in social computing.
What percent of your students are in-state versus out-of-state?
So it's 51% in-state, 49% out of state, and that is set by our regents. We are a state institution, but we're also very generous for out-of-state students. I think if you look at some of those other peer state schools, they have a much higher percentage of in-state students that is set forth maybe by their state legislature.
Okay. Great. And that's, oh, let me see. I think we have one more question. Hold on. Let's talk about back to early action. What percent of the class was admitted through early action last year or this year?
So I actually don't have that data. So that is data that we typically release in fall, and the central admissions office holds the data for their early action and regular decision. In Ross, they're all kind of grouped together. We don't have a call to action for early action or regular decision, although we encourage them to apply by November 1st.
Okay. I'm gonna focus on your contact information, Blair.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like any CBO, any counselor that wants to engage with Ross should be reaching out to you.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, reach out to me directly and we'll go from there.
Any last words?
Last words. I think the big thing is that the University of Michigan is committed to affordability. I know there's that high sticker price for tuition, but we work with students to make sure that it's affordable. It also has a diversity of major schools and colleges across campus. It's one of the best college towns in the nation. Of course, I am very biased. You probably are too, Jonathan. And then lastly, we care about our students. Like I said, I'm an academic advisor by training in student affairs, not an admissions person. So I care about the whole student. And so all of our scholarship programs are going to have a focus on the life cycle of a student and parity at the end once they leave.
Thank you, Blair. And for all of you, everybody who's registered will receive a copy of the presentation as well as a recording. Yeah, thank you all for spending your afternoon with us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being part of our community. We'll see you again soon. Bye, everybody.